Tonight is going to be the first frost, so we need to get out into the garden, harvest anything that is still usable out there, bring it into the house so that we can still use all of that beautiful produce. There are really only two things left in the garden that we need to harvest today. The first one are all the peppers that are left on the plants, and the second are the okra pods that we're keeping for seed.
Well, the very last thing to be harvested out of the garden this year is going to be okra. This year we grew the Clemson Spineless. It did really, really well. It's a variety that we do most years. We've tried others, but this is always the best. So we're sticking with this from here on out. So we're going to gather plenty so that we have a lot of seed. Now there's probably 75 to 100 seeds in each one of these. So we only plant 10 to 20 plants a year, so we don't need to save a whole lot, but I'm going to save plenty. You never know when you have a bad year and you might need some extra seeds. So we're going to pick plenty of these. We'll take these in the house, and then we'll just be able to open them up, get the seeds out when we're ready to use them.
This is one of the herbs, one of my perennial herbs that is looking really good right now. So before the frost hits, I want to cut this back and bundle it up, bring it in the house so we can dry it and use it for tea. This is bee balm. It's also called Monarda. And so I'm going to harvest this for tea for over the winter. It is a perennial, so it's going to come back next year. I just want to take advantage of how absolutely gorgeous it looks right now. It's so healthy, so fragrant. As I'm harvesting these, I'm putting them in little bundles like this with the stems all together. And then I'll just take a rubber band and rubber band that together. When I get into the house, I'll just use that part right here to clip on a clothespin and hang it somewhere, and they'll dry really nicely just like this. We are going to move a couple of our buckets in here into the greenhouse, but even though it's going to freeze tonight, it's just going to be a light frost, just 32 degrees barely. So it's not going to be a super hard frost, definitely not going to be in the 20s or in the teens. But while we're in the greenhouse, I wanted to show you that some of the seeds that we just planted in this raised bed garden are starting to germinate, and that is so exciting. We want to show you those. But we also are going to put up the floating row cover here just to try to maintain some of the warmth in here. This soil is well watered, it's been warmed in the sun, and so that will help keep some warmth within here. But I just want to show you, it's so exciting that a lot of these seeds are already germinating. This whole front half here is planted with lettuce seed. And so many of them are already starting to germinate all over this front half. Just a couple of the spinach seeds have germinated. Spinach takes a lot longer to germinate, but definitely the radishes, you can see all over here. Just the radishes are just the superstars of germinating. Kevin's most favorite, the kohlrabi. We weren't sure if they would germinate well, but they have been. They're germinating also. So really the only thing that hasn't quite germinated at all yet is the cilantro. I made a last minute decision to plant some cilantro seed in here. We'll see if they germinate, but we're so happy with the progress that these seeds have made. We're just so excited that they're starting to grow.
Well, I think we have everything ready to be protected from the frost. We'll come back in the morning, we'll check on everything with you guys, and then because the first frost will officially mark the end of garden season, we want to talk to you guys about the winners and losers of this year's summer garden.
Well, the forecast was correct. We did have our very first frost of the year last night. When we woke up this morning, it was exactly 32 degrees.
Now, we didn't get a lot of frost. In fact, just a real light coating, and as soon as the sun started to come up and hit everything, it pretty much melted as soon as the sun would get on it. So definitely not a frost that would kill, hardy plants, but as expected, it did take out those really frost sensitive plants like the peppers, tomatoes, and basil. Those are definitely done now for the season.
So we are officially done with the summer growing season, and we can now look back and decide what were the absolute rock stars and winners of the 2020 gardening season, and really what the losers were.
Yeah, there were a few things that didn't do as well as we had hoped this year, and a few things that we've given now 2 or 3 tries and have decided we're not going to do any more. We're going to find other things to try instead.
Overall, everything did great. We grew so many different plants, tons of varieties, so we can't go over all of those with you today. It would just take too long.
Right.
But if you're interested in seeing more of what we planted and how they grew, make sure you check out our playlist of our gardening videos from this past summer.
Right. Yeah, like Sarah said, overall everything did really well. Like for example, our tomatoes. In general, we had an amazing, probably one of our best tomato years ever, but there were specific varieties that didn't do very well. So those are the types of things we're going to talk about today.
We're going to start out with those that really didn't meet our expectations this year, and we probably will never grow again.
So as long as we were just talking about tomatoes, let's stick with that. The first one we're going to talk about may actually be some of your absolute favorite tomatoes, but here in our area, we've given this variety now, I think this is the third or fourth summer that we've tried them because they come so highly recommended, but here they just don't do well, and that is the celebrity tomato.
You know, I don't know if the celebrities didn't do well, but there were so many other varieties that did so much better for us that the celebrity tomatoes are just one we're not going to be growing anymore.
Right.
When we lived in Arizona, celebrity tomatoes and early girls were really the only ones that we could get to do well at all.
Right.
So that's why we've continued to give them such a good try.
Right. But in general, they got a lot more disease. They got a lot more of the funguses than the other varieties did, and much earlier than the other varieties did. They also seem to crack a lot more than the other varieties that we grew, and in general just not hang on to the plant as well.
So that is a tomato variety we're just not going to grow anymore. The other plant that just did not do well at all was the edamame, and that is soybeans. We absolutely loved them last year. They did really well for us, so we thought we'd give them a second chance this year, and we tried to plant even more.
Right.
Well, the variety we tried did not germinate very well at all, and we tried them twice. We planted them twice.
Yeah, last year we only did a few plants, and they did pretty well. This year we tried to do an entire row, and we still only ended up with only a few plants. So, and like Sarah said, we planted twice, and just both times they either didn't come up at all, or they come up just a tiny bit and fizzle out. So
I think we will try edamame again in the future, just a different variety. We only eat a little bit of it as a snack here and there. We really enjoy it, but I think we'll give it another try.
Now the next thing that I just wasn't super impressed with this year was one of the watermelon varieties that we did. We did two varieties. We did the strawberry watermelon, which is one that we've done in the past that we absolutely love. And then the other one we did this year was called Crimson Sweet, and we were not impressed with the Crimson Sweet really at all. They did okay as far as how much they produced, but the flavor I would say was mediocre at best, and just in general they just weren't our favorite. I definitely won't grow them again. I'll be looking for other varieties down the road. They were a small watermelon, which is what we were looking for, but I thought that the rind on them was very thick, and there wasn't a lot of, actual edible watermelon inside. And again, the flavor just, it was okay, but it wasn't great.
We do dedicate quite a bit of garden space to watermelons. So if we're gonna plant some watermelon varieties, we want them to knock our socks off. And the Crimson Sweet, it was fine. It was okay, and it was good watermelon, but we just want something that's just gonna knock our socks off. The last two plants that were on our loser list for this year, they're both peppers. Now, I love peppers, so I want the very best peppers in the world in our garden. We tried the lunchbox peppers this year for the first time. They're a small, sweet variety that you oftentimes find in the grocery store, and they're really just for eating. We tried that variety, and I was really disappointed. They didn't have a lot of flavor at all. The walls of them were really kind of thin, and I was really hoping for something much better, just for some fresh eating. And the last variety of peppers, this is actually the last year I'm gonna try this type of pepper. It's the Golden Cal. It is a yellow pepper, and I've just been hoping that it would turn out really well because Samantha absolutely loves yellow peppers, and this is probably the third or fourth year that I've given it a try, and it just hasn't done much. It doesn't produce very much, and it easily gets really soft, weird spots before it turns yellow. They start out green like a normal bell pepper, and then they're supposed to turn yellow when they're very ripe, and they just were very underwhelming. I'm not going to grow those again.
So those are the plants that we just have decided it's time to give up on. We'll try other varieties instead, but there were plenty of awesome plants in the garden this year as well. And that's what we're going to talk about now, because these are the plants that probably will be growing every single year from here on out. The first, since we started with tomatoes before, is our absolute favorite tomatoes. It didn't disappoint us again this year. It is the Jetstar tomato. It is by far the best tomato we've ever grown. We grow it every single year, and every year it's our top performer. We absolutely love it.
These tomatoes are so prolific and perfect. They are fantastic for slicing and eating on your sandwich. I use them for canning diced tomatoes and tomato juice. They're just absolutely fantastic. The most gorgeous tomatoes too, that we produce on the homestead.
The only downside to them, if there is one, is that they are a hybrid tomato, so you can't save your seed for the following year. You do have to buy seed each year, but as far as we're concerned, that's fine. As long as we can get the seed, we'll continue to grow them. We always grow some heirlooms as well, so we can save seed, but as long as we can continue to get the Jetstar seed, they will always be in our garden.
Next up on our winners list were the Canada crookneck squash. We are so happy that we found that. Those squash are like a butternut squash. They're shaped a little bit differently. And we tried them this year because in the past we've had so much trouble with squash bugs and really any of our squash plants. But we had read that the Canada crookneck are very resistant to the squash bug. So we planted an entire 50-foot row. They were amazing. On our first harvest, we got, I think, either 60 or 65 squash, but then since then, I think we've harvested another 20 squash.
Yeah.
So we've had like 80 to 85 squash, and they taste fantastic. We cured them for at least a couple of weeks before we started eating them, and their flavor is amazing.
Right. In fact, when my mom and dad were out here for the summer, we had some. They absolutely loved them as well. So now that we know we have 80 of them and they're moving back, we can give them plenty to have over the winter. Next up on our winners list is a cucumber variety that we've grown now several years and absolutely love, and that is the Marketmore cucumber. They are just always a consistent producer, very, very prolific. We only planted a third of a row this year and got more cucumbers than we could use or eat, and we just absolutely love them. The thing that I really like about them is that they don't grow quite as fast as some cucumbers. They kind of stay in that small to medium size for quite a while, so you have more time to pick them. It seems like some of the varieties that we grew, you go out there one day and they're this big, and the next day you go out and they're this big, and then they're like too big.
I actually picked a lot of the Marketmore cucumbers when they were still really thin, like really narrow, and only about 4 inches long. And I used them as whole pickles for my canning. And I also, the very first time I fermented pickles was this year, and I used them. It was fantastic. One of my favorites this year has been a favorite over the last couple of years, and that is one of the peppers. I love growing peppers. The Ajvarsky pepper was such a winner again this year. Ajvarsky peppers are a sweet pepper, but not a bell pepper. They stay kind of triangular shaped. They're normally grown as a red pepper, so they start out green. You can use them as a green pepper, but then shortly after they are full size, they turn red much quicker than a lot of the other peppers, and they're a red roasting pepper. The most sweet, fantastic flavor roasted. I just roasted a bunch of them. They were so prolific. I only planted 5 plants and just had a ton of peppers. Definitely a winner. I will always have those in our garden.
Now, a real surprise for us this year was our sweet corn. We planted 16 50-foot rows of sweet corn this year. We weren't sure how it would do. We planted the peaches and cream variety, and oh my gosh, were they amazing. It was so good, fresh, and we've canned a lot of it, and it is so good in the jars as well.
We were really nervous about this because we had never really given sweet corn a really conscious effort. And this year we were like, we're gonna do this. We want corn for the rest of the winter, and we're gonna try hard. And we did, and it was amazing. And we've had neighbors drive by commenting how beautiful the corn looks and how blessed we are that we had such a good corn harvest this year.
So I think next year we're actually gonna plant more than we did this year. It still didn't provide us with quite enough for an entire year's worth. So we ate quite a bit fresh, and we canned quite a bit. And we canned enough so that we can have corn probably once a week for the next year. But we'd really like to be able to have corn more often than that. So I think next year we might take that from 16 to maybe 24 rows, something like that. But the one thing that we will definitely change next year is we will stagger plant them a little bit. This year we planted all 16 rows at once. And for those of you who have grown sweet corn before, you know that once it's ready to pick, you have about a 5-day window to pick all of the corn before it is too ripe. So we had to pick and process all of those rows within a 5-day period, which we were able to do, but it was a ton of work, and pretty much everything else had to be put on the back burner there during that time. So next year we'll probably plant like 4 rows at a time, wait a week, plant another 4 rows, wait a week, and we'll do that throughout the summer so that it's not quite so much work all at once. Now there is one thing that I would like your help with as we plan next year's garden, because pretty much as soon as this garden is done for the year, we start thinking about next year's garden. And that is something that I'm on the lookout for, and that is a new variety of watermelon to replace those Crimson Sweets that we did this year. But I'm looking for something pretty specific. I'm not interested in doing the seedless watermelon varieties because that just doesn't seem right to me for some reason. But what I'm looking for is a variety that has less seeds. My absolute favorite watermelon is the strawberry watermelon, the one that we grow every year. And the flavor is amazing, but there are so many seeds that it actually makes it kind of hard to eat because there's so many seeds. And a lot of you have suggested that we dehydrate some of our watermelon every year, but with the amount of seeds in that variety, it would be almost impossible. So I want your input. Tell me about a watermelon variety that is delicious and has very few seeds.
So you guys, that was our summer review in a nutshell. We hope you enjoyed watching us grow and harvest and preserve all of our garden treasures this year. We hope that you join us for our next gardening season as well.
But the growing season isn't over for us. It's never actually over because now things are starting to pop up in the greenhouse, and we'll be growing in there all winter long. So continue to watch as we see what works well over the winter in this climate as well.
You guys make sure that you are subscribed if you are liking what you're seeing on our videos, because you'll get notified whenever we have a new video come out. And don't forget that the best way that you can help us here on the homestead is to share our videos on all of your social media.
Until next time, thank you so much for stopping by our homestead. Take care, and God bless.
God bless.